We're at the top of the hour, but we're going to wait a few minutes for people to join. Our join rate is still fairly high. Looks like Miko might be fighting with Matthew. Other than that, I think the join rate has slowed enough that we can start. Welcome and thanks everyone. Do remember that the session is being recorded and that the recording will appear on YouTube. Share video if you're willing. We would like to have as close to an in-person experience as we can achieve with the remote tooling. As we go through the session, just jump in with questions. We're not going to use the queue system unless some topic gets hot enough that we need it. A pre-agenda bash, the hot topics for the Yang semantic versioning was moved to the top because Joe Clark is going to have to leave fairly early in the call. And the use of paid libraries and IETF tools is moved right after that as it was returning from last week. Does anyone have any other agenda bashes, anything they'd like to reorder or add? All right, let's start with the big picture. Just a reminder. Most of the content that's in this section looks similar to what was there last month. We're still focusing on beating the RSC 10K event and updating the RPC tooling. The last two paragraphs are relatively new. We're still expecting RSC 10K after the spring IETF. We're planning to have both red and purple into production before we get to that meeting. We're looking at the moment about what it'll take to deploy red before all of purple gets deployed to see if we can get that into production a bit earlier. But that's going to involve building some transitionary infrastructure that to serve the role that purple will serve once it is up. There were demonstrations of red. There will be more demonstrations of red. There's a link in the notes to the recent RPC community call where a demonstration happened, and there are plans to have it online at a workstation at the RPC desk at the upcoming IETF. We'll be looking into making the staging site more generally accessible after that point, maybe not accessible to like the world, but to larger groups, leadership groups of that nature. With that context in mind, let's get into the hot topics. Joe, do you want to talk us through the conversation we had about Yang semantic versioning's effect on tooling?
Sure, sorry, I'm in a airport lounge. I don't have the greatest bandwidth. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So after about 8 years of development, we are very close, hopefully, to getting 3 drafts through IESG on Yang module versioning. These drafts, they're in the notes there. You have the module versioning draft itself, Yang semantic version, and this new file name convention, taking into account Yang semantic versioning. The responsible AD Mahesh has flagged these drafts as needing tooling. So the plan is to keep progressing them, get more IESG comments, more IETF wide comments, obviously. And then when they are ready, hold them in auth 48, get an 2B RFC number for them, and get tooling pushed upstream, if at all possible, for at least, and this code is already written, the Zim tool, which extracts Yang modules, one of the tools which extracts Yang modules from RFC or internet drafts. Pyang, which is Martin Bjorklund's tool to do Yang module validation and formatting, and maybe Yang lint, which is part of the libyang suite. Yang sun has also been brought up in RFC strip. I wrote the code for Zim to do the extraction of a Yang module and write it out to a Yang module with the semantic version in it per the 3rd draft that you see in the notes there. I've also written validation code for Pyang that will validate a Yang semver is correct, and that all IETF modules latest revision will have a Yang semver in the revision statement. I have not pushed the Pyang code northbound yet, but I did put a work in progress PR in for Zim, and Einar, who maintains it, said it would be good to get a test case. I'm like, okay, I'll add that to my to-do list, but yesterday or the day before, he merged it anyway. So Zim has support. Long story short, how does this affect the tools team? Well, part of the conversation we had last week was when this tooling is available, we would like Data Tracker to incorporate, maybe not Zim. Data Tracker doesn't necessarily do anything with the modules it extracts from a publication standpoint, but definitely Pyang. And if I or someone else gets around to libyang and Yang lint updating to do these validations, that we push these new versions of the tools, the Data Tracker, so that the automated Yang validation can make use of them. Obviously, we still also want to educate Yang doctors and the community that these changes are going into effect, and the drafts themselves do update things like 8407 bis around guidelines for Yang module authors. But we want to be communicative, and we want to make sure that the tooling is in place to help the authors. I think with Pyang, assuming Martin approves, that's not going to be a big deal. Pyang is a Python pip installed thing, which I think could be easily incorporated into the Docker build that Data Tracker uses. libyang is a little bit more challenging. libyang is a compiled C suite, and it's used out of apt packages right now. It's currently the version Data Tracker is using is 2.x. The latest is 3.x, but the stable packages or the distribution that Data Tracker is using doesn't track the 3.x. So if we get the libyang code done and we want to incorporate it to Data Tracker, we might need to build libyang from source. I don't know if that's doable, possible. We may also want to defer that because Pyang's validation may be good enough, and we can wait on libyang. But that's kind of the tentative plan right now. What the specific timelines of that are, I don't know exactly. Our hope is probably not before Montreal, but in the interim between Montreal and Shenzhen to have this done. Questions?
One observation, while we're hoping that the data tracker can just pick up newly released modules from the various packaging techniques, there are some custom checks that we have in data tracker code itself on right now the extracted file name using the old file name convention. And we'll need to know whether or not we also want checks against the semantic file name written into that code in addition to whatever these checkers might do.
That's fair. That could be a reason. So with Pyang right now, there is nothing to do. If you get a Pyang version that supports this, it will automatically check if --IETF is present, which it is in data tracker. It will automatically do the Yang semantic version checks. Well, it'll check that the Yang symver is there, and if it is there, it automatically will do the regex validation of it. With Zim, the default behavior is the current behavior, what happened before, extract with the @ revision date. There are two new flags I've added. One to also do it with Yang Simver. So it will create the @ revision date and a hard copy of the same module with pound semver. There's another flag I added which will change that copy to a symlink. So to Robert, to your point, if we want data tracker to validate that it can do the extraction to the right semver value, then that would be a reason to incorporate that version of Zim and update the data tracker code. We could do it all in one shot. We could phase this in. It really depends on what the tools team's appetite for this is, because the code is there, and at least with Zim, the author is comfortable incorporating the changes.
And questions, Joe, and perhaps Mahesh, as you are in the code as well. Once the tool is installed, will the old Yang module still be accepted? I mean, if I got a old Yang module, old format of Yang module in draft going through data tracker, would it still be accepted? And will the ISG accept it?
So if this goes
We lost you, Joe. You are thinking, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. I thought I was doing it wrong. But I think, Eric, the idea is yes, we should be accepting the old modules also and their versioning methods during the cutover period. I'm sure it will be a long cutover period, but yeah, we should be accepting both of those.
But it may be that the colored flag on the draft search results will change from okay to not okay.
Yeah, orange or something, right? Warning. Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry, it looks like my audio cut out. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're back.
Yes.
So any draft with a Yang module that has already been published, when this code goes into effect, the Yang validation that you see with the yin yang icon in data tracker won't change. The minute you publish a new revision of that draft, if, for example, if my Pyang patch goes in, what will happen is if that new revision of that module does not have a Yang Simver on the latest revision, it will be flagged as an error. So we'll say, okay, you're missing this. The new guidelines are for again, if this is accepted and published, the new guidelines are you must now have a Yang semantic version, a version tag or extension in your latest revision statement, at least in your latest revision statement. And there are rules of what to do depending on where the module is in its life cycle. So that would be flagged, and there's a pointer in the Pyang output to the Yang Simver RFC, well, would be RFC, that explains how to incorporate that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone have any other questions?
So Joe, I'm sorry, I was having audio issues myself. So did we go over the entire process? And I guess the tools team maybe from all the way from submission of a draft to its acceptance and then the ultimate publication of the module.
No, so then we went over what the data tracker validation, what would happen and what would need to be incorporated in a data tracker for the validation. The publication piece of this is, and I'm not sure if this is for the tools team or not, this is where module extraction with the new Semver label in the file name really comes into play. This would be for IANA, who's publishing the modules. There was discussion on this call last week that they would need to adjust the page which they list the Yang modules to have both the revision date and the Yang Simver version. I think my audio probably cut out again.
No, you're good.
Oh, okay, good. So that is another piece of this. Again, I don't know the relevance here. There is relevance to Yang catalog, however. So Yang catalog also extracts Yang modules and pushes to the Yang modules GitHub repository that Einar, the same Einar who maintains Zim, he also maintains that repository. That would be, I guess, on me to use the new Zim flags to export both the module by at revision date and pound semantic version, likely as a symlink, because today there are symlinks being used there, and probably to avoid just taking up a lot of space. That would be on me to add that fix, but I don't know how much the tools team is involved on the IANA's publication side of things.
Currently, we're not.
Okay, but that would be part of the process that IANA would be using. I think they use Zim. I think Benoit on that call said they also use Zim, so they would need to update their version of Zim and add the flags to do the extraction and publish both versions, or links to both the at revision date and the semantic version file name.
So maybe this is a question more for Gene on the RPC production side. What do you see as a possible impact, and
so
who should we enroll for this similar discussion on the publication side?
So the impacts I'm seeing at the moment, we have a script that is a wrapper around RFC strip. We're not using Zim. We do use Pyang. So when that's updated, we can use it. It sounds like perhaps we may need to switch tools, or I did hear RFC strip being mentioned as being updated, but it looks like we need to take a look at our current tools and see what needs to be updated. The RPC does extract Yang modules, and we do validate them.
Okay.
RFC strip came up on the call. The code, I've never looked at it, to be honest with you. There is probably going to be some time in Montreal at that, like near around the hackathon, where I should have some bandwidth to look at that. I don't even know what language it's written in, and maybe it's not going to be too difficult to add that support there. So I wouldn't think that you need to switch tools just yet. It's just I personally haven't gotten there. We might also, we will ask the netmod working group if there's any interest in helping with some of this tools development.
Okay, thanks. And we'll look more closely at what we have. So I think we also, well, it sounds like getting together at the hackathon at Sunday, perhaps, might be a good thing to do.
Okay.
And
All right.
Gene, I don't know if you want me to reach out to IANA to see if they, because I'm sure they would have similar interest.
Sorry, Mahesh, you said
Yeah. No, I was thinking about IANA and
IANA.
and getting them maybe also pulled in for to make sure they understand the impact.
Okay.
Yes, Mahesh, I recommend you reach out to Diana separately and directly.
Okay, will do.
All right, I think we're done on that topic. Going once. All right, Jay, you've got a topic from our last call that was introduced, but we didn't get to talk about it, so please go ahead.
So we're interested in community views about this, the use of paid libraries and IETF tools. We're increasingly coming across open source libraries that are both available as open source and available as sort of open source plus, you know, where you pay extra, you get something on top of it. There are two types of those. There are those that are where you buy something like a builder or something that wraps around the open source library but doesn't do anything to the open source library. And then you get those where they have extra feature sets that are proprietary components that go alongside the open source side of things, so an enhanced library. That enhanced set of features are not open source licensed. You pay for those. So we don't have a concern about the paid builder tools. We think they're much like any other productivity tool that a developer might use. The problem, of course, then is that if it's difficult to hand code the library, then that means that potentially a community developer who's contributing won't be able to do that as easily as one of the tools team developers will be able to do. But then as we know, the problem with proprietary components is that we can't expect anybody else to go out and buy them and be able to use them. And it's going to be problematic if we have to go and buy them for tools developers. I mean, it might be possible in some cases for us to buy them for community members, but not for others. So we're trying to understand whether at any point it's acceptable for us to use these proprietary libraries, these enhancements. And what the biggest the only idea that we have about how we might separate this out is that we might say, right, there are certain tools which it is expected that people will potentially build and run themselves, in which case they need to be 100% open source. But there are other tools which really only we will ever build and run, such as the RFCeditor.org website, in which case then we will, might be acceptable to use these proprietary library components in those in order to do that. Now, we don't have we don't have to do this. I just wanted to have this conversation and find out what people think about it so that we can understand, you know, because there's a lot to this and I really don't think I've thought, or any of us have actually thought much of it through. I think there's quite a lot to think through about it.
Jay, I like the idea of splitting between, let's say, only run by, let's say, the IETF itself, right? So the tools team, and run by the community. But a few of them, right, are in the middle, like Data Tracker, which is contributed by the community, but basically run on the IETF hosting, right? Yeah. So there's no clear delineation there.
I think that we would have to consider data tracker as something that the community builds and runs. Yeah.
Yeah, I think about it more in the sense of it's certainly a series of trade-offs. The challenge for me is having this as a philosophical conversation, because I start from a point of it should be open source. So to bring in the paid libraries, that would likely be because there is tremendous benefit, and that can't be found in the open source community. So what would help me reason is if we had a couple of practical examples and really thought through what is the trade for having a different dynamic, perhaps with the community, because the components are paid versus the functionality and the capability we would realize relative to that.
Okay, I think that's possible to do. I think we looked, one of the frameworks that we use, I believe it's Vue or something, has some proprietary features that go along with it that we were considering at one point. So I think it's certainly possible to bring a concrete example along. So, all right, I think that's, I mean, unless anyone disagrees, I think that's perhaps the way we work forward, is we have an actual need for one of these. We come along and we talk about a talks team meeting, and then go forward from there rather than trying to set a principle.
So make it a case by case rather than a generic rule right now.
Sorry, Eric, I missed that.
So basically making a case by case every time
Yes,
we need that,
start
we
off
come
with
back to it. Okay.
Yeah,
Which is fair for me as well.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Thank you, Robert.
All right, the next thing that we've got on the hot topics, as we identified during the Springs Tools Retreat, the roadmap that we had created using a GitHub project board wasn't achieving the goal that it was intending to achieve on providing transparency into what we were actually working on and when things were going to be available. We've deprecated it. We've marked it deprecated as it wasn't being maintained. We're going to replace it in the coming weeks with some different visualizations. We're going to try splitting the notions of what are we working on now from when is this feature expected to be in production. And we'll see if we can come up with something that better suits the providing better visibility in what's about to happen. Unless there are any questions, suggestions, then Nick, talk us through the monthly maintenance window request.
Sure. So because we're using Kubernetes and we run our own database operator on top of it, we need a maintenance window to be able to do the weekly node updates that are available, and when we need to upgrade the major version of Kubernetes and the database. So we need a time period to be able to make them. Doing so will do some downtime in some cases, so especially for data tracker, where we need to shut it down before doing any upgrades. For other application, it will be just a few seconds of downtime. So yeah, we would like to know if that's possible and what would be the best time window to do so.
So the kinds of changes are listed in the notes that we're talking about. Doing a Kubernetes major version upgrade with the way we have things deployed at the moment. It will mean relatively short rolling outages of most applications, but for the applications that have dependencies on each other, and right now that's the data tracker www.ietf.org and mail archives dependency on the shared file system. those things would be shut down for the entire time that the cluster was doing its upgrade, which could be a 10 or maybe longer minute, but not hours kind of outage. When we know we have something like that that's going to be more than just a couple of minutes, we would do pre-announcement. But generally for the ones that we expect that are going to be about the same time as a normal data tracker deploy, which is now down to, 1 or 2 minutes, we would just go forward with them. But generally speaking, what we'd like to do is get a feel from everyone on the call if targeting North American Thursday afternoons works for them. That works well for us. Over the last year, that's when we've been doing most of the big perturbations, certainly when we've been doing the data tracker deploys. It just is naturally a period where it's very seldom that a working group holds an interim during that time. Once the data tracker changes settle down after a formal telechat, there is not a lot of AD activity or other places where people would be seriously inconvenienced by that, by those short outages. So does anyone have a problem if we see a problem if we target those Thursday afternoons in general for where we would do these things, with the general approach that we would just do them if we expect them to be short and pre-announce them if we know that they're going to be more than a single-digit number of minutes. Russ, just jump in, please. We're not going to use the queue system unless we need to.
I wanted to make sure you finished what you had to say. Anyway, my only concern is that if an interim is scheduled at that time, maybe the working group chair, when he does it, gets warned, this is currently planned for a maintenance window. Would you like to shift by an hour? Or, something like that.
Yeah, I think we would work that out. We always look before we do something major to see if there is an interim about to happen. So we wouldn't step on one.
Okay, good.
The question is
Right.
if we had planned a big one and somebody missed the announcement of that plan and then scheduled an interim from that time, then yes, we'd reach out to that chair and say, hey, really? You absolutely need that time. And if so, we'll reschedule ours and make another announcement to the community. Otherwise, would you please reschedule yours? The standards process is going to win, of course, in general.
Okay, then I'm cool.
And there is always a 2 weeks period, right, before scheduling an interim anyway.
Yeah. Go ahead, Roman.
I was going to say, regardless of how we do it, I think whether it's a big maintenance window or a short maintenance window, or we're going to be turning things on and off, I think it's worthwhile to announce the possibility of that to the community. What that does to me, from my perspective, is increase confidence in the tooling, because even if only 1 or 2 people are trying to use it, their reaction, if one of the services not available, is that it, quote, doesn't work, which is a tough message to kind of push back on, or then later to troubleshoot. And your best bet is just to say that this is, this is going to be happening.
So concretely, is that an ask that we always send, for example, a note to tools discussed before we do a new data tracker deploy, even if it's expected to be a just blip amount of perturbation?
Yes, that's my thinking.
Is IETF tools, is tools discuss a large enough audience?
I don't think so. I was about to say IETF announce or IETF list, or both.
So the mechanics around IETF announce are pretty.
We could discuss that, Robert. It is a very high volume list, but we can. So I don't think once a month of these is going to be add to the volume, but we can discuss the mechanics.
Well, this is more than once a month now, because this crept into announcing not just the big upgrades of something like a Kubernetes cluster into just announcing that, hey, we're about to deploy a new data tracker version, which we want to do at least once a week.
Right.
And we quite frequently having, we really need to crank one of these out because of problem blah that we do on not Thursdays.
So perhaps the way to manage that, the tension between hitting a high volume list kind of all the time, is to have some public, easily accessible place to point to that this is the slot in which things are rolled out. Because we're talking about that there's a regular time, you're thinking once a week to be able to slot this in, or are you thinking, continuous delivery of data tracker features outside of that Thursday afternoon window?
Yeah, that's the problem, is the continuous delivery outside the window. And we've got status.ietf.org.
Right.
Its visibility may not be high enough.
Well, the visibility, but part of what I see here is it's also the narrative as to why you would have a blip, right? Because let's say we're in the universe where you're rolling out code, twice a day because there's so many kind of features. So the status dashboard is going to show that there are 2 outages a day. Well, that's an interesting conversation about this critical service, that you have multiple outages a day every, it's a very busy week, most days kind of the week. So I'm trying to trade, like, where do you have the narrative, or how do we manage that kind of narrative if we're pushing these out not at regular kind of times, and the perception of the community about availability?
I just wanted to point out, for the data tracker in particular, we do have the screen that pops up now that at least, it doesn't just not work. You get a notice that we are deploying an update. So for that particular case, it's not as bad as it was some time ago.
I wasn't aware of that feature. Thanks for letting me know. I don't know if we're going to engineer the right answer kind of here, back and forth. It may take a little bit of thinking.
Yep. So, Nick, do you have anything that you want to update us on beyond what's in the notes about the transition into Azure? So that transition is complete. It was a fairly big lift, but it went without incident. So we are realizing the benefits that we anticipated from that move. The data tracker in particular picked up quite a bit of speed. Doyensec, our current security review contractor, is finishing up, may have finished, but we just haven't received the final report yet, the security review of the data tracker and the new infrastructure, the cloud infrastructure that we've deployed over the last year. We are expecting the final report from them that we will iterate on in the next few days. So we've already addressed some of the issues that they uncovered in data tracker. They weren't really data tracker issues. They were the way data tracker uses XML to RFC, with some XML to RFC security related releases that you've already seen go by.
Robert, can I jump in on this one? So when we have security reviews, there's always a concern for us about how we share that with community. So what our general plan is that we aim to share it just with a restricted set of people. I think from previous practice, but correct me if I'm wrong, that's normally been IESG, tools liaisons, and SEC area ADs, and the IETF chair, and potentially one or two of the tools members. I think, Russ, have you seen previous of our security reviews? Maybe we should shared them there. Is anyone unhappy with that as a ongoing way for us to get community visibility on these when the report's ready? Okay, I'll take that, sir. Good, thank you.
We are 40 minutes into the hour. We've got 20 minutes to go. Keeping that in mind as we're going through the rest of these updates. Nick, please give us an update on IDNets 3.
So yeah, we've been fixing a lot of issues with IDNets 3. There's only one critical one that's remaining right now, and after that we'll be starting to use it in the submission workflow and phase out IDNets 2 once we see that no new issues are being discovered. You can help test it right now with either via the website or by downloading the tool with the links in the docs.
So my plan is to add IDNets 3 to the submission checks, but not have any submission block on its output. Just to say that at some point in the future, when IDNets 3 becomes the authority over IDNets 2, it would block your document because blah, and let people report bugs if they see that blah and they think that blah is not true, and leave it that way through the 124 submission period, and roll IDNets 3 into being the authority and taking the IDNets 2 check away after the 124 submission deadline. All right. There are several mail-related topics to go through here. Dane can walk us through the first.
Yeah, definitely. So the first one is we had a user or a potential user of IETF services log a complaint that they couldn't interact with us via email, which led to us discovering some very large swaths of the internet that were being statically blocked on the IETF mail server. So there's a variety of /10, /11, /12. You know, these net blocks are millions of IP addresses that were being statically blocked. So we have started the process of unblocking those. Currently, anything kind of bigger than a /16 has been removed, and we'll just work on removing the rest of those in due course. There shouldn't be any instance where we statically block portions of the internet for long periods of time.
And then a quick
we'll
interrupt, if you don't mind.
Yep.
You talk about IPv4 blocks. Were there or are still there any IPv6 blocks? Out of curiosity, right?
There are nothing, essentially no large ones at the moment of IPv6, but there definitely are some as well. And we would endeavor to not have any static v6 or v4 blocks ongoing.
Thank you.
Worst case, we'll add some temporary ones via some tooling like fail to ban, but just no to static blocks. So any comments or questions about that side of things? Cool. Other than that, we are looking at separating out ingress mail first to better be able to scale out as needed when we have large blocks of incoming mail and not affect list processing or password resets or any sort of use of the mail system by the tools. We haven't made a lot of progress on that yet, but hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a design out for this forum and possibly wider about that potential design of ingress first and then egress later as well. Just splitting out that functionality again to better scale and handle load spikes in any direction. We don't want an issue where somebody's waiting on a password reset for tens of minutes or hours or anything like that. So keep an eye out for that engagement. And then do you want to cover the messaging, Jay? Or do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, I'll cover the messaging. Thanks. So any questions for Dane before I move on? So we now that we have Mailman 3 in place, we're finally able to start, and it's settled. You know, we have on the new infrastructure, we have Dane and colleagues working on maintaining it and things. We're actually able to start making some changes that have been in the backlog for some time. One of them was the mailing list subscription message, where you used to be running just the default message there, and this is the new message that we've put in place. It basically, we have two messages because we have two separate note wells, and the purpose of this message is just to ensure that people are first of all, know what they subscribe to. Second, that they've got some basic instructions on how to do things, and third, that they're reminded of the policies that apply from their participation. So this is what that first message looks like now. The welcome message, and the IRTF has a very similar one that just has the IRTF note well associated with it. Those of you who haven't seen the IRTF note well might want to look at it on the IRTF website. It's 4 pages long, so that's a very, very long welcome message, but that's the first part there, and then I'll explain the other bit, and then we can talk about both of these together. Then the other one is the post-confirm challenge message. So just as a reminder, the first time the IETF email servers see an address come in, a new address as a sending mail to the IETF, it's intercepted by post-confirm. That then does a challenge back and sends a message back saying, please respond to this challenge. I haven't included the previous text, but the previous text was very sysadmin-y and not particularly clear, as in modern way of writing these type of things. So this has been rewritten in order to make it clearer that it's from the IETF, make it more likely someone will see and read it, and make it clearer what responding means, and more likely that people will respond. We can only have one of these messages, so we can't customize it by recipient, by end domain that they're sending to. So this one then is again simply has the welcome to the IETF and IAB and IRTF, states what they've received, what we've received, and tells them they need to reply, and then has this important bit in there that please note, by replying to this message, you agree to follow IETF processes and policies. So this is the click wrap agreement, basically, that by responding, you are now, you've done something active to indicate your response to that. So those are the two changes to these two messages. I have had a brief discussion with the IESG about them, and previously these were entirely maintained by the developers or the sysadmins, but there is now a desire from some IESG oversight of these actual text of these messages, so we'll incorporate that into our processes going forward. But otherwise, any questions, any conversation, discussion about these?
RPC may have some feedback on the one that we can modify, but I can work with you on that offline.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Just a quick note, Roman's pointed out for several meetings that the tools team's use of a notes page that's not what the data tracker goes to directly is introducing impedance, particularly when we miss adding a manual page that says go over here. After kicking around several ways that we could approach changing this, we are just going to start using the data tracker generated schema for the name going forward. I have added redirects for the past meetings so that the link from the data tracker's materials page gets to the right notes page. At some point in the future, we may want to revisit those schema. There's a paragraph here about why we might want to revisit those schema, but I'll leave that in interest of time to a future tools call. With the 10 minutes that we have left, I'll stop for questions.
I just want to say thank you for that, Robert.
Yeah. So with the 10 minutes we've got left, let's go through quickly the FYIs and the different project reports. Jennifer, start with the NPM supply chain attack analysis and then hand it off when it becomes appropriate.
Okay, so this one is mostly just a note in case anyone caught the news flying around yesterday about a supply chain exploit that hit NPM, affected a very large number of popular packages with basically Bitcoin thievery. We did a review of our various tools and the way that we handle our JavaScript dependencies and concluded that we're not affected. Also not affected, and also anyone who was working with the tools. There was only about a 2-hour period where we weren't doing the updates that would have been needed. So I think we're in the clear on that. And I think that's all I have to say, unless anyone has questions.
You've got the next section as well. So just keep moving forward and then pass it off when somebody else should take it.
Sorry, I got distracted by a phone call that I had to drop. So yeah, let's see. In the data tracker, I guess last week we did the upgrade to Python 3.12. Unless anyone outside the tools team has noticed something broken, that seems to have gone smoothly. Well, lets us start planning to upgrade Django as the next big piece of work that needs to happen before next April, when the version that we're on goes out of support. We also did the personless user cleanup that we had talked about, and again, haven't noticed any problems related to that. Let's see. And I think the other thing that I wanted to call out in particular was just wanted to so we made some progress on the liaison work and some requests from the IESG, and wanted to thank a couple of, I guess, Eric, who did some work on the IESG work, and a community member that, as far as I know, we don't know, who submitted and followed through on a pull request that helped address some of that work. So I think that's what's going on with Data Tracker, and I would hand off to Kasara.
So
there's been a couple of updates to XML to RFC, mainly to fix security issues that was discovered by DynSec. Other than that, there's major backtail version upgrade for IAB and IETF websites. What you can expect in upcoming month is new versions for SVG check and RFC to HTML. When I'm working on getting the PyPy publishing workflow set up correctly on both projects, and when it's done, there'll be a couple of new releases with the changes listed in the notes. Yeah, that's it from me. Nick?
Well, I already talked about IDNets for drop, so I think I can skip to Ryan for Mail Archive.
Okay. Since the last call, we had 3 releases. The work was really focused on upgrades to the underlying software packages, including from Python 3.9 to 3.12, all the associated dependency Python libraries, including Django from version 4.2 to 5.2. We looked at upgrading Elasticsearch. We're on 7 now. The current version is 9. It was not going to be a trivial upgrade, and so that's actually on hold now while we investigate replacing Elasticsearch with TypeSense as a search engine. And then also work has begun on implementing the blob storage as the backend storage for messages in the archive. And that will be continuing as we, blob storage development that's the future task.
I can continue regarding Purple, our RPC workflow tool. We are now working more and more closely with the RPC to get feedback from them. Yeah, in the notes you'll find a list of recent improvements and new features. So most notably, we completed now the flow that we can follow the whole life cycle of a draft from import and queuing into the queue. We are importing the authors. We improved matching the authors with data tracker persons. We did a lot of improvements on the UI to make it in general less cluttered, cleaner, and more easy basically to find the information. Then we improved the concept of assignments. So we imported all the RPC personnel that's currently working on drafts into Purple. And we will also show if an assignment is finished, what should happen next on a draft. Then we did some improvements regarding dependencies. So we show the status of document dependencies and who's currently working on these documents. And upcoming changes are working on a visualization of clusters, showing them in a graph, then showing recently published RFCs, and some overall improvements regarding speed. So loading speed, improving our API, our DB queries, and some improvement regarding the front end to speed up page transitions. That would be it from Purple. Matthew, do you want to continue with red? Unless there's questions.
I think we might have lost. Nope, Matthew's still here. Good.
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so on red, mostly there's been progress on the new info route, which is, as has been previously mentioned, is going to be embedding RFC content on that info route. So now we can been able to use PDFs. So previously we weren't able to, we required HTML content for RFCs, but some of the very early RFCs only had PDFs or PostScript. So now we sort of extract those as screenshots and with alt text and are able to display those. And there's been a bunch of fixes to dark mode support across the Red app, so that if you've got a screenshot of a PDF that is just sort of a big, large white rectangle, typically on screen, that you can display that in dark mode as well.
Matthew, I need to interrupt you. Metaco is failing us. Audio is the only thing that's working, so we'll go ahead and close the meeting and follow up on the mailing list for any remaining questions.
Okay.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.